Hello, Johanna. This is such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate taking the time. I'm really excited to learn more about you. I've got a little bit of information here, but why don't we start with you telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm kind of a late bloomer. I didn't really find out what my life's work was until I was about 55. Um, I got married young, helped my husband go to graduate school, had two kids, checked all the boxes, did all the right things. And then at about age 48, decided there had to be more to life than that. And I had been pursuing my husband's dream and the family dream. And I thought, it may be time for Joe's dream. So it took me until about 55 to realize that I needed to do something in my life about domestic violence, which I don't call domestic violence any longer. I call it intimate terrorism. And those are not my words, and I can't honestly tell you where those words came from, but intimate terrorism much better describes what happens than domestic violence because there's nothing domestic about it. And
Mhm.
it is intimate and it is terrorism. So my childhood family was very angry, alcoholic, and abusive. And at age 13, my father attempted to murder my mom. And luckily, my brother, who was 4 years older than I am, my brother and I were at home. So we got him off of her and out of the house finally for the last time. And
Wow.
this was in the late 50s, so I'm kind of dating myself, right? But just a fact that to me is horrible. Up until 1975, marital rape was legal.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So in 1959, the police would come to our house and they would tell my mother to fix her marriage. So anyway, and some of that still exists, unfortunately, today. But so at age 55, I had some time and I had the resources that I didn't need a paying job at that time. So I went to volunteer at a crisis shelter in Boston. And it was a residential shelter. So we had women and their children. And a woman came from Chicago with two young kids and a black trash bag full of all their belongings. And she had nothing. And she came up to the crisis office where I was working and she asked if I could help her. And I said, come on in. I don't know what I can do to help, but we'll figure it out. And she had spent literally every penny she had for bus tickets to get as far away from Chicago as the three of them could get.
Wow.
So she arrived to us with nothing. And she had no driver's license. She didn't have the kids' birth certificates. She literally did not exist legally.
Mhm.
So she needed $40 to send away to Chicago for their duplicate documents. And of course, it's totally forbidden for volunteers to give residents money.
Really?
But I'm not too good with rules, and I never
I would have a hard time with that too.
was stupid. So anyway, I said, well, let me think about it. And at the end of the day, I went downstairs and I got her in a dark corner and I gave her and I never have money in my wallet because it goes away and I have no idea where it went. You know
Mm.
how it just
Hmm.
flies away. So, but that day I had three $20 bills. So I'm thinking, okay, God, this is obviously something I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I gave her the two $20 bills and said, use this for the documents. And the third $20 bill I gave her, and I said, take this for envelopes and money orders and what's ever left over, take your kids to McDonald's for a treat. Well, she burst into tears and I burst into tears. And anyway, I'm driving home in a very nice car to a very nice house thinking, oh my God, I just changed a life for $40.
Yes.
And then again, God works in not such strange ways. And I knew that I had to do something in a bigger way than that. So I started a nonprofit to give financial grants to survivors after they had been away from their abusers for at least 6 months, because it takes that long till they're kind of out of the crisis mode where they can kind of make a plan. And I also knew that I wouldn't have money to waste. So we had to have good plans and we had to have only survivors who were ready to make a change and to actually create their best life, which meant financial independence. And it also meant breaking the intergenerational cycle of intimate terrorism, because it is intergenerational. It's kind of like a deadly disease.
Mhm.
So anyway, I started a nonprofit, and my dream, and this just goes to show that we never dream big enough. My dream was to help 100 women for $1,000. But I didn't know where I was going to come up with 100,000, so that was a problem too. But anyway, after 12 years of working, it turned out to be 2,200 women for $1.5 million.
Wow.
And that was just one baby step at a time, one day at a time. I still don't know where all the money came from because fundraising is so hateful and horrible to me. I was always much better at saying thank you than asking for money. So thank you must have worked pretty well. Um, and so I had these 2,200 stories of women who, with a grant of between $500 and $1,000, totally changed their lives and changed the lives of their families. And each grantee had to pay it forward to 3 other women. So it was really exponential. And we kept really good records. And I had interns from Babson who did all kinds of statistical analysis. It was really great. So anyway, 2,200 women, they had 2.3 kids each. They each gave, paid it forward to 3 other women who had 2. Anyway, it was like 20,000 lives were touched.
Wow.
So it was a really big dream. And when I was working with these, well, before I started working with the women, I knew that we had to create a kind of a life plan to know where that 500 or 1,000 should go. And the cash never went directly to the women. It would go for a laptop or to the college or to the landlord or to whatever. And they basically got to design the grant themselves for how they wanted to do it. So, but I knew if I was speaking with survivors who are just starting to get their feet on the ground, and I would say to them, all right, we're going to do a life plan, they would totally freak. If somebody said well, my life has already been planned, but if I said to you, okay, Lindsay, today we're going to do a life plan, you're like, oh my God. So anyway, I couldn't call it a life plan. So I call it a dream proposal,
Oh, I
which it
like
really
that.
is. It's a dream proposal. And in the book, there is, and I can actually do a dream proposal for your listeners in 5 minutes if you want to do that later on. But in
Yeah.
the book, it describes the dream proposal. So anyway, I would meet with the survivor and her advocate. They always had to have an advocate because I had to know that they had been out for 6 months and I had to know that they were ready
Mhm.
and knew kind of what they wanted to do. And then we got more specific in the dream proposal. So when I was working with the women, we do the dream proposal, and I knew that because of the abuse, that their self-esteem had been demolished. And then I learned it wasn't just the self-esteem, it was their sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
Because if we have no sense of self or self-worth, then we can't have any self-esteem. And I'm kind of not only a late bloomer, but a slow learner. It took me many years to realize that the basis of worthiness, which is the basis of self-esteem, is actually self-forgiveness.
Mm.
To me, everything in the world is about self-forgiveness. Um, we as kids have not had perfect parents, and hopefully most of your listeners were lucky enough not to have alcoholic or abusive parents. But parents say things that stick with us and
Yeah.
make us feel less than or not good enough. And um,
They don't have to always be abusive either for some of those things to come through.
right. And oftentimes as kids, we take blame onto ourselves for things that really were not our fault.
Hmm.
So when I talk about self-forgiveness, I don't talk about you forgiving yourself for maybe saying something in anger to your child or to your spouse or to your parent, or I'm talking about a blanket self-forgiveness for who we are as human beings.
Mm.
We are human beings. We are imperfect. And I believe not 100% of us, but a very large percentage of us are doing the best that we can do in our lives with the tools and the knowledge that we have.
Yeah.
I also believe that we are put on this planet to learn our lessons about how to be better human beings. And we're all on different paths, and we're all on different places on our paths. Some are at the beginning, some are close to enlightenment, but not many of us. So we worked a lot with self-forgiveness. And in order to have the dream proposal really work, you have to believe that you deserve the best. So I would talk to them about worthiness and say that we are worthy of our best life just because we breathe, not because we've done anything or been anything. Oh, by the way, I think women should be more and do less,
Oh,
right?
that is a repeating message in so many ways
Because
throughout my
we
life.
fall into these black holes where, oh my God, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to be this, we have to be that. No, no. Be who you are
Yeah.
and do less for everybody else.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And in turn, you're giving more, really, but
it
it's hard
is.
to get
That's
that
what
across.
self-care is about. And if you're taking care of yourself, we can't give. That's not what we're here to do, and that's not healthy or correct for anybody
Hmm.
in relationship with us, you know? So anyway, I started working with the dream proposal. And in the book, there are 5 stories written directly by survivors and grantees about what their grant did for them. And then there are many kind of vignettes, short little pieces that I have written about the women that I worked with. Um, for example, we did a lot of work in Chicago. Actually, we ended up, there wasn't Zoom back there then or Google Meet, but there was Skype. So we did a lot of Skype grants, and the advocate was there as well. So we ended up by giving grants in 26 states, which was really kind of cool
Oh,
because
that's awesome.
I was just located in Boston. But I did go to Chicago. I did a lot of work one-on-one in Chicago, which was just fabulous. So we worked with a Korean American agency. And we gave a grant to a Korean woman who really didn't speak very good English. We did a lot of non-English speaking grants, but we worked with translators. It made the dream proposal a little bit more difficult, but we still did it. And anyway, she did not speak English, but her translator was an advocate, was wonderful. So she came to me looking for a sewing machine because she was a tailor and she and her husband did tailoring work. But when he left, he took the sewing machines. So she had no way to do it. So she might have gotten a job in like dishwashing in a Korean restaurant, something like that, but nothing. And she was probably in her late 50s, early 60s. So anyway, she came and asked for a sewing machine. And she knew a man who was selling a sewing machine with all kinds of other, I don't know anything about sewing, but threads and machines and all kinds of really great stuff for $700. So we did the dream proposal and I wrote the check that day to the name of the guy. And she got the sewing machine and she started doing tailoring work in her apartment because she had some past clients. And 2 years later, I was honored to be a CNN hero. And we went to Chicago to film. And we went to her tailoring shop,
Oh my gosh.
big and beautiful. And people were coming and going. And we were in the back and translating. And
And only 2 years
she
later.
was she was negotiating to buy the building
Oh,
where her shop was.
with $700 on a sewing machine.
$700. So,
Wow.
and this worked time and time again. Another woman we gave a grant to for a food cart, not a truck, just a cart
Okay.
to have on the streets in Chicago. She now owns 3 restaurants in Chicago.
Oh
Yes,
my gosh.
yes. Um, so the thing is that I believe, and I'm sure you believe this with your podcast too, that just one person believing in you, just one knowing in their heart that you deserve the best and have the power to create it is life changing.
Hmm.
And I don't know if anybody's ever asked you what your dream is, your big dream. Nobody had ever asked me that. So, also get yourself a belief buddy, somebody that believes in you, and you be her belief buddy.
Yeah, someone to hold you accountable.
Well, not only that, but you can do it. You
Yeah,
can do it.
cheerleader and
Yeah, yeah. And I also believe, and this is what happened with starting my nonprofit. That first step of the $40 made every other step show itself. If you take the first step, the second step will show itself, and the
oh yeah.
millionth step. But the first step is always the hardest.
Hmm.
And that's where the belief that you deserve the best really has to come into play.
Yeah, I believe that that's God's way of showing us, like encouraging us. So you take one step, I'm going to give you a boost of 10 steps without you having to do anything or do less, like you were saying.
And you don't know who's going to show up to support you after you take that first step, you
Hmm.
know?
I feel like we're all kind of waiting for an opportunity to do something like that. And so when you see someone
Well,
else,
if we think hard enough about what we want to do and believe big enough that we can do it, even the first step will show itself.
yeah.
Or the first step will be forced on you if
Mm.
you don't do it.
Yeah.
It may be a way that might not be as pleasant as if you decided you were going to do it in the first place.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is so amazing. You're not even talking about a lot of money, 500 to $1,000. Some people might think, "Oh, what is that going to do for me? Am
Every
I going to change my
every
life with that?" But it's all,
every foundation I went to, every corporation I went to begging for money, what can that do? What can that do? Well, we gave probably between 600 and 800 laptops. I could get a laptop from Best Buy with a nonprofit discount for $250.
Mm.
I could make a deposit on an apartment for $500.
Mhm.
I could get a class at a community college for $500. That food cart that allowed that woman to create, she first started at her first restaurant was at a food court, and it was a vegan restaurant. And then she went on to marry a chef, and the two of them now have three. But that cart cost $1,000. But when she came to me, she knew where she had to get the food certificates, and she knew where she could have it made. And $1,000, boom, she was off.
Mhm.
So it, the little bit of money, the belief that she could do it, and somebody to support her, what
That was all the
it
fertilizer.
yeah, it really it works. And some of these women were working 2 and 3 jobs. They had 2 and 3 kids. Um, just amazing, amazing women. Oh, another great story. A woman from Brazil who's only spoke Portuguese came to us, and we did her dream proposal. She had left school in 5th grade in Brazil, and her big dream was to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And I can show you how we did this on a dream proposal, but we figured out and gave her what she needed. She needed to learn English, and there are free English classes, but she needed transportation. So we gave her subway money. We gave her a laptop so she could study. There were free GED classes. And then we could help her, um, I think, with an application to a summer program before applying to a community college.
Wow.
So when you think of
Wow.
the steps and the goals, you can really put it together.
Yeah, and chunking it out into small actionable steps makes it so much easier to believe in and to digest. I think most people would get wrapped up in, well, she only went to school till 5th grade. There's no way she's going to be a doctor, you know?
There is, shall we do a quick dream proposal for
Yeah,
5 minutes?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so everybody get a piece of paper and a pencil or pen. This is going to go on your refrigerator so you look at it all the time. So at the top of the page, put dream proposal. It's going to have 3 parts. We'll go through each one, but I'll just tell you quickly. The first part is, what is your biggest dream? The second question is, what are the steps and goals? And the third question for when I was giving the grant was, what is the price, the cost of the first step? But your third question will be, what is the first step you'll take tomorrow? So before we start, we're remembering that we forgive ourselves everything. We're only human and we're imperfect. We deserve the best and we have the power to create it. And you're going to be a belief buddy, and you're going to have a belief buddy to help you. So the what is your biggest dream has 5 parts. The first part is, what is your dream career? And we'll talk about that when we get to the steps and goals. Her dream career was obviously to be a doctor. The second is, what does your dream house look like? Now, as I said before, a lot of these women had 2 and 3 kids. A lot of them were working 2 or 3 jobs. And we're lucky if they had an apartment of their own. But we didn't want to dream of an apartment. We wanted to dream of the dream house. So we actually designed the house. What does the house look like from the outside? Is it a colonial? Is it a cape? Is it a ranch? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? What does the kitchen look like? Is there a yard? Do you have a dog? Is there a pool? What kind of neighborhood? Do you live in the city? Design the house. And then I would say, get some magazines and cut out some pictures. Do a dream board. I'm sure you've
I
worked
was
with
just
dream.
gonna say a vision board.
Yeah. So we call it a dream board to go with the dream proposal. But
Mhm.
And then because I'm a crazy car person, I said, "What is your dream car?" But you're not allowed to say a minivan. No minivans. You're allowed to say a Maserati or a Lamborghini, but mine happens to be a Porsche. But so, and then what about dream travel? The first trip you take without kids. Oh my God, how can I take a trip with it? You can take a trip without your kids, figure it out. The second trip, you can go to Disney World. And then it took me a long time to figure out question five, but question five is all about self-care because none of this is going to happen unless you are really taking care of yourself. And there's some really good self-care stuff in the book. May I read you something very quickly about self-care?
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Okay.
was just going to ask you what is your definition of self-care? There's a
I
lot of
got to
different
give that
variations.
to you right now. Okay. Self-care, this is, I think, chapter 2 of the book. Self-care, the neglected child within. Self-care begins with self-forgiveness and self-love and is accomplished by remembering the neglected, lovable child within. Self-care is an attitude, a mindset that allows us to put our own health and happiness first. This doesn't mean you don't care about your kids or your partner. It means you come first. Adopting this attitude means that once your needs are met, you can do what you need to do for others. Be happy, healthy, and ready to help those you love. You may not be used to treating yourself well. Let's face it, most women who have been abused haven't learned the art of self-care and don't know where to begin. Start off easily, small if it feels right, or large if that's better. Here are some simple self-care activities. Prioritize your sleep, making sure you get the amount and quality you need. Watch your nutrition. Learn to eat foods that support your health and energy. Take a walk by yourself. Walking is free and one of the best exercises for mental and physical health. Cook your favorite food, not the kids' favorite, yours. Enjoy it privately. Paint your nails. Take a warm bath with bubbles. Read a book or magazine you love. Are you getting the hang of it? These are the things that require little or no money and will give you pleasure. I'm sure that you'll think of many ways to soothe your soul once you get started, and no feeling guilty. Treat yourself the way you treat your best friend. Be your own best friend. Later, as you learn to heal your wounded child within, you can add one step at a time, everything else you need to make your life exactly what you deserve it to be.
That's so good. Treat yourself as you would your best friend. A lot of times I tell people our thoughts sometimes can be so destructive, and we would never say
Self-talk is
things.
so awful.
Yeah, we would never say some of the things that we think up to and about ourselves to our
Right?
friend ever. We wouldn't think of it,
No,
even our worst enemy. But
no.
we're running around sometimes unaware of how bad that is and how far it
I,
gets
I
out of
think
control.
I think for that, awareness and curiosity, it's a habit that really needs to be broken. And I'll drop something or do something and I'll say, "Oh, Joe, you stupid." And then I'm like, "No, don't talk like that." But
Yep.
it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, it does.
It's not easy stuff.
Mhm. Sometimes, we think things are going to be so difficult. Change is so difficult, but if we
Right.
focus on the simplest things such as that, we
It
can make
is,
such a
it's one
difference.
baby step at a time. So anyway, back to the dream proposal. We talked about self-care.
Yep.
And some of these women were literally not taking 5 minutes, didn't have 5 minutes to give themselves during the day. So even a bubble bath, even a bath without bubbles. So anyway, that's the first question. The second question is, what are the steps and goals to achieve those 5 dreams? So for the Brazilian woman, it was to learn English and to get her GED. So that's where the price of the first step was the transportation and the laptop. And then she had a little bit of money left over for when she had gotten her GED. So you can figure out whatever your listeners' dream career could be. There are free classes online. There are, if you want to start a company, there's a SCORE organization in every city, and those are retired executives who will help you start a business. The book itself is a little bit of a journal as well as great stories. But there are spaces for journaling, there are meditations, there are affirmations, there's self-care, great quotations by wonderful women. And at the back of the book, there are tons of resources for free education, free legal, a lot of really great resources that I had gathered when I was working with survivors.
Awesome.
So, if you're thinking, okay, I want to start a company and I don't know how to do it, your first step would just be make a phone call to SCORE. Just or write down what, where, when, and how you would like the business to be. But when you're going through all this dream stuff, just really think about what will bring me joy, because you don't really want to be doing anything if you don't have to, that is not bringing you some kind of joy.
Hmm.
Yes, there is hard work always included. If I had known how hard I was going to be working for those 12 years, I probably never would have started. But I was meant to do it, and I'm really proud that I did it. But things that bring you joy and also things that soothe you, because in this world that we're in right now, there's so much stuff going on. And I think we really have to be careful about what we let into our brain and our emotions. We have to be really self-protective.
Well, and I like that you say focus on the joy and what soothes you instead of the financial outcome. I think there's a lot of temptation to, um, your mind wants to figure out, oh, how am I going to make money? How is what I like to do, maybe how is sewing going to pay my bills? We don't focus on that how, and we allow our creativity to kind of expand, and then we live in that higher vibration of creativity, and that's
Right.
when you attract all of those things that you really want more of.
Right. Yeah, I think I think if we start taking the steps, we don't really have to worry about the how. I really
Yeah.
believe the how will show itself. I really do.
Mhm.
And I also believe, and it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but if we're doing the right thing and following our path to joy, our path to fulfillment, things will be easier than if we're trying to do it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Going with the flow.
many years banging my head against the wall, thinking, I got to do it this way, I have to do it that way. And if you're banging your head against the wall, chances are it's not the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And look for the signs. Look for the signs. They're really everywhere. Oh, that person said the right thing at the right time, or oh, that person showed up to help me. And I believe there are angels everywhere. We just have to keep our eyes open and look for them.
Yep.
And be an angel to somebody ourselves for sure.
Yeah. And giving and receiving go hand in hand. When you talked about giving that $40 to that woman, that just allows the channel to open up.
Oh yeah. It comes back. It comes back tenfold. And when I was working with survivors, we worked a lot with gratitude. And when you hardly have a place to lay your head, it's really hard to be grateful. But they did have a place to lay their head, and their kids were healthy and safe. And I try when I go to bed every night to say, I'm grateful for at least five things. And then I wake up in the morning and I'm grateful. And gratitude when gratitude is really in the mind and the heart, it doesn't leave room for a lot of other yucky stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, and doing it before bed is a really good time to do it because it's like a reset for your brain, I feel
Right.
like. Yeah.
Right. It does reset the brain. And you can keep a little journal next to your bed and just write 5 things down. I
Mhm.
also suggest that if you keep a journal next to your bed, write the 5 things that you have to remember to do tomorrow. And I'm not saying like paint my house or, whatever. Just 5 things that are on your mind that you're going to have to do tomorrow. And when they're on that piece of paper, you no longer have to think about them when you're in bed. They're
Yeah.
taken care of. And I think that frees the mind from pinwheeling.
Hmm. If it's okay, I want to circle back to something you said about paying it forward. So, how did that look um, for the women that you were helping? Did they have to kind of take somebody else under their wing in a certain way, or was
No,
it?
it was simple, very simple things. And we did surveys at the end of everybody's first year about what they had done and how they were doing things. And I was in touch with a lot of these women after longer than the first year, but drive somebody to the grocery store to shop or babysit so somebody could go and get some self-care or refer somebody to Web of Benefit. It was very small things. And what we found was they didn't really stop at 3.
I was gonna say, I bet they didn't.
They didn't because it, I mean, it's almost a selfish thing to do because it feels so good.
Right.
It just, whatever we put out there just comes back tenfold. It just, and I got, over the 12 years, I got so much healing from my childhood working with those 2,200 women that, yeah, it was really hard, but I wouldn't have had it any other way.
I really feel like that's part of the journey. Like we go through something for a reason, obviously, and sometimes what we go through is really dark and horrible, and you can't even imagine that there is a purpose for it. But nothing. What is your quote in your book? It takes a woman to empower women. It takes a alcoholic to help other alcoholics recover. It takes somebody who's been there,
Right.
really helping
Well,
other.
and the book says it takes a woman to empower women, and then it's a survivor's guide to creating the life of her dreams. And then there's an asterisk, and down at the bottom, it says we are all survivors. And I don't want this to be a depressing part of this podcast, and it shouldn't be, but I believe abuse is on a spectrum. And first of all, we are born into a patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Women are less than in
Hmm.
this country.
Yeah.
So we're born into a system that is not good for us to start with. But on the low end of the spectrum, we have catcalls, we have sexual remarks at work, we have gaslighting, we have all kinds of stuff. And then on the upper spectrum is homicide. And all of us are in there somewhere. And even the catcalls or the sexual innuendo, wherever that might be, that's damaging stuff.
Yeah.
It hurts. It hurts. And I think we have to be really aware of that and say, that's really not about me. That's about them.
Hmm.
And that doesn't get to take away my self-esteem or my self-worth. And I don't have to forgive myself for that. I did nothing to cause that. So, yes, the book has a lot to do, well, more to do with dreams than there's only one chapter and a short one about abuse. But it's more about how all women deserve the best, not just women. And there are obviously many different kinds of abuse. There's, emotional, psychological, there's spiritual, there's financial, and oftentimes the physical heals faster than the psychological or the
100%.
emotional, but all women deserve to know that they deserve the best
Yeah.
and have the power to create it, no
Yeah.
matter where they are in the socioeconomic timeline.
Yeah. And so your book is not just for women who've survived domestic abuse, it's for all women, really.
I think it's a fun, easy read. There are great stories. And as I said, there's the self-care, there's the journaling, a lot of great journaling prompts. So yeah, I think and it's also on an ebook. You wouldn't be able to, do the journaling piece, but they tell you how to journal. I think it might be good for everybody. And
Yeah, it
also,
sounds like it.
any money that the book might make will go to women's causes.
Ooh, what an extra bonus.
So
Yeah.
it's a way for me to continue doing the work that I did, but not having the funding.
Hmm.
Although I'm putting it out there, if anybody wants to give me $5 million, I'll start all over again.
I love it. Put it out there. Um, I did write down a quote that you said that I really, really love. Maybe we could touch on that a bit. We never dream big enough. I love that. Do you have
I
anything else
don't
to
think it's
add to that?
possible to dream too big. I really don't. Um, Sometimes it's hard to find the steps and the goals for the dream. But that, even if you can't find the steps and goals right away, don't let don't let any dream be too big. We just we have no idea what we're really capable of or where help will come from. And
That's
as
a
you said,
groundswell.
sometimes the bad stuff really looks bad, but that can help us along our way as well. Um, I look back on my childhood and, it really sucked. And it took a lot of spiritual work and a lot of therapy. But if I hadn't been through that, I the nonprofit wouldn't have existed. I wouldn't have been able to help those women. So, and I used to say this to my kids, and they said, "Mom, you're driving me nuts." But especially as teenage girls, are you going to remember this as being awful tomorrow or next week or next month or next year? And they're like, no, no. So sometimes the bad stuff isn't as bad as we think it is when we get a little farther on. Oh, one thing I forgot to say to your listeners and to you, while you're working towards this dream and you're trying to be more and do less of all those things you're supposed to be doing, stop at least once a week and say, what have I done this week?
Ooh, yeah, reflection.
And congratulate yourself because we're like on this treadmill like a little hamster. And it's like we never stop. And it doesn't have to be, I saved a life. What did you do toward a step or goal? Or what did you add to your self-care? Or how did you help the kids? Or how did you pay it forward? What did you do nice for somebody? Um, and if you're looking for what to do nice for somebody, there are so many volunteer opportunities. Volunteer.com, put in your zip code. They will find you. I'm mentoring a Chinese student in ninth grade right now, and the poor boy is looking at me like I need this grandmother person. But we seem to get along quite well. And I've had enough experience writing that I can help him with his note taking and his writing, and he can get his math and his technical stuff from other people. But volunteering is just, God, if we all went out and just did something nice one day a week, how different the world would be.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be much, like you said in some of your examples, just taking a friend to get her nails done or taking her kids so she can go get her nails done or so she can have a
Absolutely.
minute to herself.
Right.
Doesn't cost
Yeah.
anything.
And trading kids is a great way to do that. I did that when my kids were little because we didn't have a lot of daycare back in the day. But yeah, um, I think that and the gratitude piece, I think, are self-forgiveness and gratitude are really two really important parts of my life.
I love it. Yeah. And really, you are teaching people to take their abuse and alchemize it into abundance. Some people get stuck in the or me and let it define themselves. And it's important to remember that we can take our past and change it into something that is meaningful. And that's exactly what you've done and what you've helped people do. Sounds like.
Well, and I think it's good to have a lot of curiosity, like what is this about, and what am I supposed to learn from this?
Hmm.
I don't know who said it, but somebody said there are no mistakes, there are just lessons.
Yeah.
And that sheds such a different light on things, you know?
Yeah. Always be winning. You're either winning or you're learning something
Oh,
along those
that's very
lines,
smart. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of us are stuck, and change is scary.
Mhm.
Change is really scary. So my advice is just whatever you're going to do, just one baby step at a time. Just the big is scary, but just what are you going to do tomorrow? That's all.
Yep.
And
Oh,
be kind to yourself. Please be kind.
I love it. And I love this dream proposal. That is so cool. It really activates the creativity and gets you thinking, gets you out of the small self, gets you, you know, dreaming bigger than what we tend to dream if
Oh,
we
and
wouldn't be thinking like that.
dream out loud, not only big, but really loud, only to people that you trust, of course, but dream loud because you never know who's going to be there to help.
Yeah. And there's something that activates when you voice something that means something to you, there's something that is activated.
Yeah,
And God, the universe, whatever you believe in, wants to give you those desires, I believe.
absolutely. I had a wonderful spiritual mentor years ago, and I was a control freak. I held tight to everything because I thought my life would fall apart if I
Yep.
didn't hold
I was
tight.
there. I did the same thing.
Yeah. And she said, and I'll never forget, this is probably the smartest thing she ever said to me. She said, Joe, control stops the magic.
Ooh, that's good.
And it does.
I love that.
Yeah. And
Yeah, respect.
there is magic everywhere. But when you have a vision or a requirement of a specific outcome, you may be stopping yourself from getting an outcome that is 1,000 times better than what you think is the good one.
Yep,
So dream big, steps and goals. What do you do tomorrow? And then give up control.
I love it. All right. Um, Before I forget, I want to make sure everybody knows where to buy your book and where to find you.
You can go on the website, which is ittakes.a woman.net. It's the title of the book, .net. And there are links to buy the book. There's all my contact information, all our social media. There's a blog. There are multiple other podcasts. There are writings from the book. And you can buy the book basically anywhere. It's on Amazon. It's on Apple Books. you just have to search the title, It Takes a Woman to Empower Women. And then Johanna Crawford is the author, and you'll find it um, anywhere and everywhere.
Perfect. I'll add all of that to the show notes.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here. Is there any one more thing that you want to add that you maybe forgot or I didn't touch on, or um, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
All I want everybody to know is that you deserve the best and you have the power to create it.
Mm,
Pure and simple.
love it. Well, you've given us so much, so many good nuggets. I've got like 3, 4 pages of notes here. So
Oh,
I love
I
it.
didn't overwhelm everybody.
No, no, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. I definitely want to pick up the book.
Oh, good. Well, I hope you enjoy it.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
And may you find the life of your dreams.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It
You
was
as
great.
well.